Good morning, party people. I had to laugh when somebody sent in YouTube, like, this is a beautiful sunset in San Diego. It's sunrise. It's very early. Well, I say it's very early. I mean, I'm up again as usual since like 2 a.m. But it's 6 a.m. here Pacific time, and I'll be in here doing open questions and answers for the next couple of hours. You can ask questions over there at pollgab.com/room/Brento. And then you can also vote on the other questions that people have asked, and then we'll be taking the top voted questions and working through those in order. Christian says, oops, my mistake. The Christian was the one about sunrise and sunset. I know how it goes, though. I have the same, like, I am completely and utterly paranoid about time zones. I have had so many recurring nightmares around time zones. Like, it sounds fake, but for real, seriously, like actual recurring nightmares. I have had situations where I've shown up at clients at the wrong time. I've shown up at clients in the wrong day. Like, there was one time where I went to the, make sure to read what's up at the top there. That's where we're going to do our questions at. There's one time I go to the client's office and they had a Starbucks in their lobby, and I'm at the Starbucks and I'm getting coffee before I show up, and my client contact, good friend of mine who I actually haven't heard from in a while, I need to go talk to, steps into the Starbucks. He's like, "Hey Brent, it's good to see you here," and he's like, "So who are you here to see?" And I'm like, I'm here to see you." He's like, no, we don't have a call today. We don't have a meeting today. You're scheduled to be here next month. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh, I screwed that up so bad. That is so totally exactly like me. I've also had instances where I've had been supposed to go live at a presentation at a certain time, and I go at a totally different time. Just unbelievable. Oh, Christian, that's different. Well, then, see, I have so much respect for people who do stuff that's not inside their native language. I've got maybe 3 or 4 years worth of Spanish under my belt from school, and I know enough to get myself into trouble. Like, I understand way more than I can say. The thought of me doing a technical presentation in another language is just stunning. Like, I can't even imagine. Surjith, glad you like the jacket. It's kind of sad. The Isle of Man TT was just canceled for next year. They usually run it in like May and June of each year, and they just canceled it for 2021. That's funny. I know, Richie. Brent speaks more. Hola, senor. Me gusta mucho. So let's see. Vitigalore said the same thing with appointments. Let's start with our first question in here. So let's show. We have a question from, let's see who this is from, Alex. And now that is not actually showing. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can get that to work. Let's see if I can get that to work. Let me see. This is the first time I've ever used this tool, this PollGab thing. There we go. So it says, hi, I'm facing some, and oh, who is it? Alex. Alex asks, hi, I'm facing some problems with memory pressure in my log. Normally when we think of a log, that usually means the transaction log, but I think what Alex is referring to is the error log. I don't have some custom CLR function. I have a lot of linked servers where I'm syncing data. Could that be a reason for a memory leak? So what I think you're probably getting is you're probably getting messages in the error log saying that SQL servers had to flush things out due to memory pressure. And there can be all kinds of reasons for that. One of the most common is actually other applications running on the same SQL server. Like, people will have Management Studio, integration services, reporting services, analysis services, all kinds of things installed on exactly the same SQL server. And then they'll get these warnings saying, due to memory pressure, we're having to flush some stuff out. The thing that I would start with is, you probably, in a perfect world, I'd say, as Mr. Consultant Man, I would say, don't install other things on the SQL server. But you can't change that really quickly. It's not like you can take that and immediately pull everything off of the SQL server. Although I would say, if it's due to Management Studio, don't do that anymore. Like, don't remote desktop into the box and go into Management Studio. So instead, what I would do is set SQL Server's max memory lower. In my SQL Server setup guide, I talk about leaving 10% free for the OS or 4 gigs, whichever is greater. So like depending on how much memory you have in the server, you may need to back down max memory quite a bit. That's just by default. And if you install other applications on the same server, you may end up needing a whole lot more. WRTKO, check out how to ask a question now. We got a new little tool over there you can ask over there. Next up, the next highest voted one looks like from EB. EB asks, is there a way to pass a secret parameter like a password to a stored procedure so that when it's profiled, you get all asterisks? Oh, I don't think so. Dave, pay attention up here as to how you ask questions this time around. We got a brand new system in this week. So I don't think so. I don't think there's a way that you can mask that. That's so intriguing. That's a really good question, and I totally understand why you're doing it. And I can't think of, and I know there's got to be all kinds of other ways. And people are going to say, like, go fetch it from a table or use always encrypted. I don't have a great answer, but I love the question. That's probably a great example of a question that you could go post over on Stack Exchange. If you go to dba.stackexchange.com, then you can post your question over there. If you don't get an answer within the first like 2 days, shoot me an email and I'll promote it to my network too as well, because I just absolutely love that question and I don't know a good answer to that. Let's see, next up, the next highest voted question out here is from Dorian. Dorian says, thank you for taking our time and answering our questions. You are welcome. Always a pleasure. Could you please describe in which way you would aim your troubleshooting when you see CX packet, SOS scheduler yield, and page IO latch as top of the wait statistics? So that's a little beyond what I can do quickly during a question and answer session. Hey, folks who are asking questions, make sure to go up here and read this part up here. It's a little beyond what I can do quickly in terms of a Q&A. Here's what I'll ask you to do. Post that as 3 different questions. Post it as CX packet, one about how do I handle CX packet waits, how do I handle SOS scheduler yield waits, one about how I handle page IO latch waits, and then we'll let the audience vote on which one of them they want to see, and whichever one y'all agree on as a group, I'll do a demo and show you live, but it's going to take like 15-20 minutes to walk through one of those demos, so I only want to do one of them. So I'll let y'all pick as a group which one you want to do. Next up, let's see here, we have WRTKO asks, not a technical question, but what was the worst problem you ever encountered with your clients? Whatever happened to you not to solve an issue? Oh, the worst ever problem. Let me think about that. Hold on, I even have a sound effect for when I'm thinking here. Where is this? It's been a while since I've used this. There we go. The worst problem. Okay, I know exactly what it is. So I was really good friends with one of my clients in downtown Chicago back when I lived in downtown Chicago. We would go out and have dinner and all kinds of stuff. And when one day I get a call from him on a weekend and he goes, hey, are you doing anything right now? And I was thinking it was like a casual fun thing. And I was like, maybe, what's up? What do you want to go do? And he says, we just lost our entire data warehouse. We've got the entire team in the office. If you've got time, we'll hire you to drop by. And it was like a Saturday night. And I'm like, sure, I love production emergencies. I'm a database administrator. I love being the hero. I love parachuting in and seeing what's going on. Now, this was a 15, 20 terabyte data warehouse. So it's a big deal. You don't just go and restore a 20 terabyte data warehouse. So I go into the office and there's a team of people there who are talking, and turns out that they were doing a SAN firmware upgrade and they toasted the SAN, and that was the SAN where their backups lived. So they had no recent backups, no production server copy, nothing that we could quickly restore and copy across there. They did have an array of development servers with slightly older copies of the database. So the team was completely freaking out. Just everybody was completely bananas. And I love emergencies like that. I truly have a good time. And I said, all right, everybody sit down. Just sit down in the office here. I grabbed a whiteboard marker and I started writing. I'm like, here's part one, this is what I'm going to assign one team to do. Here's part two, this is another team is going to get this one. Here's part three, another. Like we were restoring different versions to different places. We were running checkdb, all kinds of stuff that we were going and doing. So it goes on for, I don't know how long we were there, like 2 or 3 hours as we're working furiously on it. The production database administrator at one point said, I need to take a smoke break. I'll be right back. Put their coat on, went downstairs, and never came back. Moved to another state and took another job. And the way that we found out was that they called in, or their new company called in for a reference on that person. So that was the worst thing that I'd ever seen, only because it didn't bother me at all, because I'm like, the damage has already been done. It wasn't like I did it. It wasn't that big of a deal. But the way that you set yourself apart as an administrator or a developer or whatever is how you handle emergencies. When the poop hits the fan, if you can keep it together, then they'll remember you doing that. No one cares that you drop the database or things like that. Richie says that gives me an idea. Richie goes, I'm out of here. Richie catches a boat to Cuba. But yeah, that I think was the worst one that I've ever encountered with my clients. There have also been ones that I encountered personally, just when I was a database administrator, but that one's one of my favorites, just because that person went off on a smoke break and then never came back. Next up, looks like Dave asks, I have a 1.6 terabyte database that I need to migrate from New Jersey to Texas and set up in an availability group by Saturday. What would be the fastest approach? Back up to multiple files or continue automatic seeding? Ugh. So it sounds like you're already, oh man, you're in a bad spot. Automatic seeding, I have had such bad luck with, just spectacularly bad luck with. So what I would do is I would start doing the plan B now. Like I would go ahead while the automatic seeding is happening, just let that go, but let it go. But back up across 1.6 terabytes, you probably want like 4 or 8 backup files. Back that up and then FedEx it over to wherever you need it going. Welcome, Oliver, to the club. FedEx it over to Texas, and then you restore just the log backups over the wire. But I definitely wouldn't put any faith in availability groups automatic seeding, sadly, when you have A, a time deadline, and B, a span that far for a database that big. Automatic seeding's great for 10, 20 gig databases that are sitting in racks next to each other, but when you get to that point, that starts to get a little sketchy. Next up, Garrett says, in some of the scripts in the first responder kit, there are hints like inner hash join. How do you determine that a hash is, or a hint is needed and the type of hint to use? For instance, in SP Blitz first, why was the inner hash join chosen over loop and merge? I didn't actually put that hint in, so other people, tends to be like Eric Darling or Jeremiah Peshka will put those hints in. And it's not that I don't believe in the hints, it's just that when it gets to tuning DMVs are a little weird because we don't have the choice about doing indexes on them. You can't index a dynamic management view. So people who are truly rocket surgeons on execution plans will end up doing really extreme edge case tuning on very large servers. So there can be cases where if you've got a server with, and I'm just going to pull a number out of my hat, 10,000 databases, that some DMV queries won't work worth a damn. We've especially run into that. I say we, Stack Overflow has especially run into that, where there have been some DMV queries that simply won't finish, especially around availability groups. So often with the case of those, either somebody like Eric or Jeremiah would open a support case with Microsoft or ask their friends over at Microsoft, and working with them, that's how we got to hints like that. I'll be honest, I don't ever use join hints when I'm tuning a query. I just don't ever get to the point where that's necessary. I'm sure that other people do. I've just never had to deal with that myself. Let's see here. So let's see another one here. Next up, oh, I hit the wrong button, but that's okay. So, oh, this answers for page ILH wait. So, all right, so I'll show you that one. Let's go demo that one. So the original question was, so what do you do when wait stats report page IO latch waits are the biggest bottleneck? To simulate that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my server, I'm going to go into memory, and I'm going to do something a little bit weird. I'm going to set my server's max memory down to just 1 gig, just 1 gig of memory, and then I'm going to say OK. Now, SQL Server reacts a little weird whenever you make memory changes that large, so I'm going to go ahead and restart my SQL Server just to make sure that he's controllable after all this crazy stuff finishes. So then he's going to start back up. So he is starting up now, and let's just go and double check. Sometimes I put a script in that will automatically change the max memory settings. See, I did. Oh, that's so funny. So let me set that to 1 gig, and then let me go disable my startup job, because I have a startup job that will automatically set my max memory settings. So let's go do that. And then let's reconfigure it again and restart. Try that one more time. And get this thing to restart. Pasquale says, can avoid restart with reconfigure with override. You can to get it to take the configuration, but SQL Server still explodes when it has to shed like 20 gigs of RAM in a matter of seconds. It usually becomes unresponsive when you do that. Believe me, I've done enough training classes where I've tried to do that and all hell is broken loose. So let's switch over to the Stack Overflow database, and I'm going to use a table that's too large to fit into memory. I'm going to use the comments table. Now in the comments table, it has exactly what you think it has, a list of every comment that people have ever posted on Stack Overflow. And there's a user ID column. I'm going to query to find all of my comments because I happen to know my username by heart. Now the comments table is fairly large. I'm going to make sure that I don't have any indexes on there whatsoever. So the comments table is 22 gigs in terms of a clustered index. 22 gigs, that's obviously way too large to be cached inside of just 1 gig of RAM. So if I start by dropping all my indexes, and then I say select star from DBO comments where user ID equals 26837. That's me. Now to see what the overhead of this is, what we'll do, those of you asking questions, make sure to read the thing up at the top of the screen there. So what we'll do is we'll set statistics IO on. This lets us see the number of 8K pages that a query runs while it executes. Now also, in another window, I'm going to go run SP Blitz first. So over here, I'm going to say SP Blitz first, expert mode equals 1. Move it over just a little bit more so we can see it. And seconds equals 60. So what this is going to do is it's going to take a 60-second sample of our wait stats while it runs. So we'll start the sample, then we're going to start the query. Now over on the left-hand side, at first it looks like the query is finished, but it's not. Notice that it's still running. That's because it takes some time in order to scan 22 gigs worth of data. We can prove that it scanned 22 gigs worth of data if I go look at the execution plan. Here we show that we did a clustered index scan. We did it across the whole entire table in order to find my comments. There weren't a lot of comments that renewed or that came out. There were only 150 that matched, but we had to read the whole entire table to find them. The number of pages that we read, it's about 2.7 million. If I take 2.7 million times 8K, because that's how big a page is 8K, divided by 1024, divided by 1024, that gets me 21 gigs worth of data. Hey, that rings a bell. That's exactly how large the comments table was. The comments table was 21 gigs, so that's why this thing took so long. It had to read 21 gigs worth of data. Now over on the right-hand side, our 60-second sample of weight stats has finished. And if I go in and look over here, the top weight types that I have are CX consumer, which involves parallelism, and page IO latch. Page IO latch is when we read data pages from a data file, specifically uncached data pages from a data file. The reason why we had to wait was that if I look down here in the next section of SP Blitz first, it shows which files we read and wrote the most to. And you'll see I've got a Stack Overflow database that's made up of 4 separate data files. We read about 22 gigs, 22 gigs worth of data out of those 4 data files. Now my page IO latch weights weren't too bad because I have bananas fast storage. I got really fast solid state drives on this thing. If most of you wanted to read 22 gigs worth of data, you'd have a really hard time dealing with that in a span of a fairly short period of time. Okay, so now having said that, how do we make page IO latch weights drop? So I'm going to type through it in the order that I would do it if I were you. So to fix page IO latch weights, 1, tune indexes, 2, tune queries, 3, add memory, 4, tune storage. The reason why I put them in that order is that it's relatively easy to tune indexes and get a really big bang for the buck across a lot of queries. Tuning queries, I talk about in my query tuning classes where every time I open an execution plan, I really have to flip my half-hour glass. It's usually going to take me at least half an hour per query to either make changes to the query or to make changes to its indexes. 3, adding memory, because memory covers all kinds of sins. It just makes it so much easier not to have to go hit storage. And then 4, I put tuning storage last, not because it's the least important, but just because it's the hardest. Usually it's really hard to get management to approve changing your storage or making changes to the storage in terms of performance tuning it. Now in the case of ours, it's really simple. All we would need to do is create index user ID on DBO comments user ID. Now, of course, too, if I've only got 1 gig of RAM, creating indexes is going to suck pretty bad. But when you're out in the wild and you're looking to figure out which indexes you want to add, you start with SP Blitz index, get all databases equals 1, and you're looking for high value missing indexes. That's when your buddy Clippy is out there saying, hey buddy, these are the indexes that I really wish you would add. Now, of course, Clippy's indexes come with their own gotchas. If you watch my videos on missing indexes that are out there on YouTube, you can see the drawbacks of that and how those hints get generated and why they're so complex to troubleshoot. So there you go. That was that answer. Very nicely done. Good question. Now I'll go ahead and mute the other 2. Oh, someone even did it for me, I think, automatically. No, so there we go. We'll get rid of Dorian's other one on SOS scheduler yield, get rid of that one, and then we'll get rid of the one on CX packet. All right, there we go. Now let's see what the next one is. The next one up, and so for those of you who are wondering how the questions work now, you can go to that URL up on the top, and then that's where you can go and ask questions and vote on other people's questions. Next up, Steve says, what would you say is the main thing that DBAs waste time on that doesn't really matter? That one's easy, fragmentation. It's not that fragmentation doesn't matter, it does. But DBAs are just obsessed with it. Oh my God, you would think it was their waistline or their weight or their cholesterol. And it blows my mind how they just watch it. They're like, hold on, I'm watching fragmentation. And I have a theory. My theory is that because most DBAs find it really easy to work on fragmentation, like what they do is go run index rebuild commands and reorg commands, and they think that they're making a difference because they see those numbers change. Those numbers don't mean a damn thing. So you want to focus on whatever's making your query slower, and it's almost never fragmentation. All right, let's see here. Let's go through a couple others there, delete a couple of things, and then delete and delete. Let's see. Next up is not the DBA you're looking for. Good to see you again. Did I click the right button? There it goes. Is there a specific problem that you get from clients that just makes you know it's going to be a nightmare to fix? Yes, several. User-defined functions. Oh my God, scalar user-defined functions. Table-valued user-defined functions aren't that bad because we can rewrite them as inline, but scalar user-defined functions, damn. Because until you get to SQL Server 2019, there is nothing that I can do to tune the functions themselves other than just make the function as fast as possible. But it still causes the calling query to go single-threaded. That just sucks so bad. So I really bums me out when that happens. I get why people do it because there's nothing in books online that says like right at the top, yo dog, don't use this. You're going to regret this for the years to come. But man, that just totally sucks in terms of trying to fix it at a client. Oh, it's just terrible. Next up, the next highest voted question is from Christian. Christian says, is it better to use SQL Server 2016 Service Pack 2 or 29 with an older compat level? I don't want to use adaptive memory grants, but I also want to use the newest available version. See, here's the thing. SQL Server 2019 has been so chock full of bugs that I'm like surprised that they don't call the Orkin man. It has been so buggy. There have been so many problems with it. And I'm getting kind of nervous. I'm like teetering right on the point of whether or not I publish a blog post saying to the public, I would hold off on any further deployments of SQL Server 2019 until Microsoft gets this patching thing together. I get it. They're in a tough spot. Right now, the employees are, I guess, working from home, not wanting to, or dealing with all kinds of personal issues. So Microsoft just announced yesterday they're not doing any more cumulative updates for the rest of the year. They actually have recalled it. They recalled cumulative updates 7. They put out cumulative updates and then changed the readmes, putting different things inside of there. So I've just kind of lost hope in that. If I were you, Christian, and this is what I would tell my clients right now, I would adopt 2016 or 17 before I would do 2019. Both 2016 and 2017 are pretty mature at this point. 2017 is like a rock and roller coaster. I'm really tempted to blog it. It's one of those where I know I'm going to burn a lot of bridges when I do. So right now I'm just kind of gently floating it out on the streams because I do know some, not the DBA you're looking for, says they recalled CU7 the day after I updated to it. Yeah, so I'm just kind of gently floating it out there now, and we'll see what happens. I'm not quite exactly sure how they're going to do this. Next up on the votes, LORAD. Oh, so how are y'all liking? I'm curious to hear too what you like, how you like this new system. It totally makes my life a lot easier, so I'm curious to see how you do it. And it's also kind of nice because I can watch the chat go by too at the same time you're doing these. LORAD says, I like it a lot. Well, of course you like it, LORAD. Your question's up on the screen right now. You're like, I'm a huge fan. People upvote my questions. LORAD says, good morning. I'm at a point in my career where I would like to shift from working full-time for a single employer into consulting work for a variety of clients. Oh, yeah. Oh, sure. I realize it'll probably take years for me to make the switch, and I'd like to start working towards it. Can you share your advice on how someone should start down this path? Yes. Okay, so the number one thing, and when you mention pitfalls too, the number one thing is you already have all the technical skills you need. Regardless of where you're at in your career, you already have all of the technical skills that you need. What you need are clients. People think they're just it's like going to be Field of Dreams. They're going to hang out the sign and then clients are going to come storming in. That is not how it works. The way that you start is decide, do I want to do long-term work for clients? Like, do I want to work for a really long period of time? Or do I want to do short-term emergency work? I happen to specialize in short-term emergency work. Now, the pay on that's high, but the flip side is I need a constant churn of clients. Like if I'm going to make a living doing 2-day critical cares, I need 2 new clients showing up every week. And that doesn't mean 2 people thinking about hiring me. That means 5 to 10 people thinking about hiring me for the 2 people who actually do. So if you do long-term work, then you don't need nearly as much of a sales pipeline. But when you lose one of those clients, it's gonna hurt. There's gonna suddenly be a big, huge, giant hole inside your calendar. That's gonna suck. So it just depends on which one of those 2 you want to go down. I'm going to assume that you want to do long-term because that's the easier thing to get started with. Assuming that you do long-term, what you need to do is start talking to everyone that you've ever worked with who's gone to move on to other jobs. Richard's, that's true. The trick is, can you get people to actually pay for fixing it? That's the tricky part. Start talking to everyone that you've ever worked with and say, hey, just in case you ever need help with something, holler. And start by doing it for free. Start by just answering your phone or emails and see if you can get enough free work to keep you busy. Then you get to the point where you go, you know what, I want to help you with that, but unfortunately I can't do it until this weekend, and I'm going to need to charge you X dollars over the weekend. And you start really cheap to kind of get your foot on the ground and understand. Now, you have to talk to your current employer and make sure that they're okay with you moonlighting. But as long as they're okay with you moonlighting, and make sure that you get that in writing, then that's how you gradually on-ramp up to it. But the hardest thing by a long shot is getting enough clients. I know so many consultants who hang out their sign and then back out, because getting the clients is the hard part for sure. Then once you've got enough clients to have a parachute, then it's not so bad. It isn't terrible. Next up, Binu asks, Richie says, I got my first consulting client by checking in with former employees. I worked with that client for 3 years. Because plus 2, when you do that, you're not worried at all about auditioning with other people. Now, you have to audition with the new company, but you've already got someone on your side who's vouching for you. So it makes it so much easier. You're not competing with the public. They already know that you know how to do your job. There was somebody else who said something funny. Not the DBA you're looking for. Says, might need a big red banner at the bottom of the screen. Some people seem too stunned by your presence to read the small text. Man, ain't nobody read anything around here, right? Like, nobody reads anything. It's amazing how any of this happens. I thought about moving the question part down to the bottom. We'll play around with some different ways of doing this just to make it more obvious how connecting the 2 dots. Usually, it seems like people are figuring it out within a few minutes too, so that's kind of cool. And we got a few questions out in the queue, so that's kind of cool. So the next one was Binu. Is there any way we can sync passwords of SQL Server logins between all replicas? So the problem is you have to know that which one is the truth. You have to know which one is the source of the truth, and users can change their password on any replica. You might have, oh, that's so good. That's so good, SQL Pilot. That's pretty good. It's just so good. They could change your password on any replica. You could have read-only reporting users that only have permissions on a secondary, and then they change their permissions on a secondary, and then your job is replicating them from over at the primary. So what you really kind of need to do is you need to not have them change their own passwords. You need to have them call a stored procedure or something like that that also triggers syncing the login to multiple replicas. But that's why generally I just wouldn't try to sync SQL passwords across replicas. I'd have people use Windows authentication if you're going to try to sync passwords across availability group members, just because that's such a pain in the rear. And now you know why you don't see a lot of tools out there that do it, that people are like, hey, I should use this. If you go to dbatools.io, dbatools.io will let you sync all kinds of things between servers. It's a PowerShell framework, and then you can pick which one you want as a single source of truth. Just be extremely, there we go, DBA Tools. But just be extremely careful, because DBA Tools doesn't know which one's the single source of the truth either. It's real easy. I've seen people just point it at the primary replica and sync those changes out out everywhere, and boom, next thing you know, you're out. Okay, so next up, Muppet1 asks, do you advise answering questions on places like dba.stackexchange.com to improve your marketability? Let me turn it around and ask you, if you were going to hire somebody, what would you look for in their resume? I think that answering questions on places like dba.stackexchange.com is good for your career in the sense that it sharpens your skills. Most employers, though, I don't think put a whole lot of stock in public profiles like that. I think it is good for building up your marketing inside your own like peer group. Like there are people that I know through their Stack Exchange activity, but they ain't getting rich off of that. You know, it's something that they're just doing because that they're passionate about it. If you only had, say, 8 hours a week in order to improve your marketability, I would write blogs. I would start a blog, write blogs, and that's also like a long-term resume for you to show what you were doing at different points in time. Nobody can take that away from you. You can write about whatever you want. I think that's much better in terms of marketability. Next up, we have Vic. So Vic says, hi, Brent. Love watching your session all the time. So, thank you. I appreciate it. Recently encountered an issue with our web service where there was a mismatch with last updated column, so throw a concurrency violation. So it's tough to know without looking at the code. It sounds like you're trying to maintain your own last updated at both the database and the client. A common thing that will break that is updates that come in from other places, like not inside the client. Say that you've got replication going on that's merging data between places. Somebody runs an update in SQL Server Management Studio, etc. So those will all be things that change the last updated date on the server. What you're really asking for is how do you do cache invalidation? Cache invalidation, and that is extremely hard. If you Google for cache invalidation, you'll get much better answers as to why you don't want to try to maintain two updated dates on both the database and the client. Next up, Italo asks, are there relevant metrics for tempdb health? Yes, and I teach them to you in my new class. So I have a brand new class. If you go over to brentozar.com and then click training up at the top of the screen, if you go brentozar.com and then click training up at the top of the screen, then exactly, go down here. There is a fundamentals of tempdb class. That is a one-day class where I teach you what uses tempdb, why that causes problems, how to configure tempdb, and how to monitor it. But I want to start with what uses tempdb so you can understand what anti-patterns you have to look out for inside your monitoring and what metrics you have to look out for. You like that segue, huh? That's pretty good. Worked out pretty well in my favor. Let's see. Next up, Richie asks, if you had a rocky training montage of your career, what would it show? I'll tell you one particular episode it would show. It would be when I dropped a 4U rack-mounted server and it missed my foot by about that much. That would totally be in there as part of the blooper reel. But I think like it would start with me working in hotels. Working in hotels at the front desk of hotels really taught me what customer service is, how to interact quickly with people. I'm not saying that I'm good at it necessarily, but just taught me what ways of it work for me. And then focusing ruthlessly on the client, whoever my customer was, even when I was a database administrator, a programmer, a systems administrator, all that stuff along the way, I was always like, okay, to the client. When I say client, my end users or my manager, whoever that was, a CIO, what do you need to do? What is it that you need to do in your job that I can make easier in order to help you succeed? So it would be helping hotel managers, accounting people, CFOs, like how can I make your job easier? Also, a whole lot of eating and drinking. It's like kind of the opposite of a Rocky. You know how he's like eating chicken breasts with nothing on them? I would pretty much eat the opposite of that. Muppet says, I think that's the longest it's taking you to plug a class. Well, plus two, over the last month, I was doing the Black Friday sale. And a big thank you to all of you who bought during the Black Friday sale. This was our best year ever by a long shot. Yesterday was actually our highest revenue ever in a single day. It was just absolutely fantastic. Thank you for trusting me with your training money. And I am now going to Mexico. That's only partially true. I'm going to Mexico for vacation in like 2 weeks, but I'm excited to share with y'all the live classes over the course of the next couple of years. Asking for a friend says, does this mean Surly Dev doesn't have to copy paste all the questions across now? That was our goal, was to make it easier. I was looking for services like crazy, and then we stumbled across PolGab to trying to make it easier for y'all to just ask your questions in one place and to moderate yourselves. Because you know how it is with all of the stuff that comes through here. When we were doing chat, you know, people would spam in here. People would ask the same question over and over again. So I like the idea of this because it helps y'all figure out which questions you want to see on screen and helps you flag stuff with moderation. So that's kind of cool. Next up, Bandar says, I have plenty of DTC abort request waits, and I see a lot of aborted transactions on DTC. Where do I start to troubleshoot this? I don't actually do any DTC work at all, like none, no distributed It's not that it's terrible. I've gotten to the point in my career where I just have been able to dodge that bullet every time. You know what I would actually do if I were in your shoes is I would open up a Microsoft support case. It's $500. It works with Microsoft. You open up a support case for $500. They work on it until your case is solved. It's not necessarily real time. They may ask you for things and then come back to you a day or two later. But it is the most cost-effective way to get really unusual problems solved. So that's really honestly the place where I would start. Just because if I knew that there were a good resource that I could point you to, I would point you there in a heartbeat. But if you're having problems like this in production, don't screw around. Don't ask a question on a forum on that one. It's so niche. I've dodged Java for 25 years. You and me both. I tried learning Java at one point. And I'm like, this sucks so bad. It was like Eclipse. I was just like, oh, I have an allergic reaction to Eclipse. Next up, Tim asks, I'm moving some existing databases into an Azure managed instance. Are there any common security blunders to watch out for? I don't do any security work at all. There's 2 questions in a row. I'm able to say like, nope, sorry, I don't do anything. I don't do any security work at all. And in fact, my consulting contract actually prohibits it. Like I refuse to do any security work at all because I think that it's something that you want to hire a real security firm for. You don't want to end up on the front page of the newspaper and be like, I thought I followed all the best practices, and then end up having that on your resume that you worked for whatever company it was that got owned. So I would be really careful about trying to just think that there's going to be some magic best practices to get you through. If you're going to put a SQL server on the internet, go hire a security firm. I agree. Yeah, Skyward. Yeah, absolutely. People will say, oh, in my experience, when they don't actually have any experience. That's something that I really wish that conferences would do. I wish that when you went to a conference session, there were badges on the session that says, the speaker has done this in production multiple times. The speaker has done this in production once. The presenter has never done this in production. I'm okay going to sessions where people are talking about something that they've never actually done in production, but I want a disclaimer for everybody else because I've sat in presentations knowing the presenter, and the presenter said things like, oh, I just read about how this feature worked and I worked on it overnight until I came up with this session. And I'm like, I have choice words for you. Next up, Garrett says, what is the best resource to learn PowerShell in a SQL Server context? dbatools.io. So dbatools.io is the kind of industry standard framework for PowerShell for SQL Server. The authors of that have a book called PowerShell in a Month of Lunches. So search for the book PowerShell in a Month of Lunches, and that'll get you there. Michael, there's one person who has, Greg Lowe. Greg Lowe out of Australia has used it in production and talked about it. He was where I learned about it from, was in the Microsoft Certified Master program. He was talking about it, and he gave all the like pros and cons of the real world kind of thing. But of course, we don't see it because he's over in Australia and doesn't come over quite as often. But he actually has got real world experience, which is kind of cool. And he's just the nicest guy. If I had to pick like one of the nicest people in the world, it would probably be Greg Lowe. Oh, wow, he's just an incredible gentleman. PCITA says, what's your starting point for regression issues due to migration to newer version of SQL Server? So I'm going to give you the book answer first, then I'm going to give you the real world answer. The book answer is that you stand up a brand new SQL Server of the new version, you replay the exact same workload on it. Richie, I see how much you, it's not me. You replay the exact same workload on it, and you compare query plans and performance between the real world production server and your new version of the SQL Server. Almost nobody does that because it's so hard and so expensive. So for me, one of the most common ways that I'll go and do it is I'll talk to a client and say, go give me your 10 worst queries, the queries that are causing you the biggest problems that you're trying to performance tune. Then let's take the top 10 queries that execute the most frequently, which are typically very short and fast. We're going to take those 20 queries, we're going to forklift them over to the new SQL Server, and we're going to run them side by side with production, and we're going to look at differences in their execution plans. It's like the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That's kind of how you do regression testing, is go take 20 queries, and if you can do it on those 20 queries and you're confident and you don't find problems, you're off to a really good start. Most of the times when I do it, we do find problems. And so that way, when you find problems really quickly that way, that's kind of the end of that piece. Not the end that you don't go to it, but that's just the end of the hard journey. Not the DBA you're looking for says, are you talking at any conferences next year? I will, if SQL Bits calls, I will totally always answer. Like, I love that conference. It's fantastic. But otherwise, I don't know if I'm going to speak at conferences because it really depends on how my year goes. I'm in the midst of planning a move to Iceland, which I always want to look and see if they've answered my email. Is there anything in there going in here? Nope, nothing yet from Iceland. Okay, there we go. Depends on how it goes with Iceland. We may buy a house in Iceland. We'll kind of look and see. And so my schedule's really fluid right now. So I'm kind of holding off until I know more about that. I will tell you this, I will not be in person. I will not be in person at any events in 2021, period, full stop. Even if I am vaccinated, I could not live with the guilt knowing that I was at an event, someone wanted to go, and someone infected their loved ones or elderly or someone who is vulnerable in the population. Is just not worth it. Nothing that we do is that important. Next up, Flogin asks, is there a clear map from SQL Developer to DBA? There are a lot of concept-focused videos on the internet, but I'd like to have clear directions on what to learn first, second, and etc. Yeah, sure, I'll show you. A book is a great example of that. If you go to brentozar.com/go/books, and I'll zoom in and put that in again, brentozar.com/go/books. That's a great example of where you would want to pick up a book because you're going to get much more detailed, fine-grained type stuff inside of a book than you'll get from a video from the internet. Because videos from the internet, we can just only go so deep so quickly. So in there, I've got books kind of structured out. Whoops, I clicked on a link. Structured out in order. I've got them for T-SQL books, performance tuning books, and then I don't have current recommendations for database administrators, but generally developers are best off going the performance tuning route first rather than production database administration. The thing with learning production database administration in the year 2020 is that a lot of that stuff is being automated away. And I don't know that I would want to put you on a path to learning a lot of that when that part of our job is being automated away. I'd focus on the performance tuning work, which is not being automated away. That's a whole lot safer in terms of your career. Danny says backup. Brent in Iceland, that means they'll finally get a backup fiber internet connection. They do have multiples now these days, actually. They're one of the best connected countries in the world, believe it or not. So it's better than the United States because in a lot of ours, we just only get one single internet connection to our homes, and that's about it. Next up in the queue, Matt says, if we make a query like this, in this particular situation, I expect SQL Server to estimate 0 rows and returns. Now, do you know how to manage this case? Yeah, so this is a little beyond what I can do during a webcast or like a Q&A webcast, but that is one of the things that I talk about in my Mastering Query Tuning class. So Mastering Query Tuning, it's a 3-day class. The next one happens to be in December. It's this month. So if you want to attend that, you can head over to my Mastering Query Tuning class. It is common. We do address that exact issue inside the class, but it's just way further than obviously I can go into quickly here. Next up, let's see here. Next up is IO Control, who says, what would be a good study pathway to go from networking sysadmin to SQL Server DBA, assuming there are no DBA opportunities with the current employer? So studying isn't going to get you there. Studying isn't going to get you there because no one wants to hire a DBA without experience. What you have to do is you have to get a sysadmin job at a company that has SQL servers, and you have to do a lot of SQL Server-ish work at that company so that at the next job that you go to, whether it's inside that same company as their DBA or whether it's the next company where you're going to segue into the DBA role, that's how you do it. But you can study your brains out. What you're up against is a whole bunch of people who read things online, who sit around watching YouTubes sessions conducted by some guy in a race car jacket or a motorcycle jacket. That's not going to be enough to get you in for the job. You really have to have experience, and that's where. And I made the same job. I came with the sysadmin role, sysadmin and developer, and then just kept doing more and more work with the SQL Server to the point where there was a job where I could say, hey, look, my last job was as a sysadmin, but 60, 70, 80% of my time was focused on the database. So it's about time that, I can tell you these are all the things that I've done with databases in the past. I just didn't have DBA on my title. And then if you want to hire me, you can get me kind of as a discount because it didn't have DBA on my title. And here's all these references from people who can prove that I did know what I was doing. So that's the way I would go. Screw studying, as funny as that sounds. Stuart says, I recently had a query plan with a hash and sort operator that spilled to tempdb. Experimenting with So I am not a fan of option min grant %. What I would rather do is get your query to have more accurate estimates. Because here's the thing, if you go start hinting how much memory every query needs, guess what problem you're going to run into? Your SQL Server isn't going to be able to cache a damn thing. You'll never have anything up in cache because every query is going to have a min grant % hint on it. And the more queries that are running, the more screwed you are. Like you're just going to get overwhelmed. So instead, I totally get where you're going. That does not fly long term. What you want to do instead is correct why the estimates are wrong. That's where my fundamentals of query tuning and mastering query tuning classes come in. And I even say inside those classes, I'm 100% down with a max grant hint. I am not okay with a min grant hint. When you find yourself trying to use a min grant hint, stop, step backwards, and ask what the problem is, and then go chase that problem down instead. Next up, Amanda asks, Amanda says, my professor wants me to solve this. Write a script that calculates the common factors between 10 and 20. I don't even know what a common factor is. To find a common factor, you can use the modulo operator. The script should, can you do it? I don't even know I don't even know why, no. Oh my goodness, no. You know what, I'll tell you, Amanda, so true story. I've dropped out of college 3 times. I have dropped out of college 3 times. I suck at game problems. When someone says, I would like you to make an igloo out of sawdust and penguins, I'm like, what the hell sense does this make? And that's usually been my experience with colleges, is that it's full of questions like that. So Amanda, I give you a round of applause for trying to do that. I am so totally not the person to answer. Here's what I would do, is post that over at stackoverflow.com. Post that over at stackoverflow.com. And then Selamit, make sure to read up there at the top of the screen. I know it's hard to see. It's up at the very top. It's really hidden in black and white. So Amanda, post that over at stackoverflow.com. Those people are brilliant and they'll be able to figure it out, but I'm ashamed to say that I immediately hit a break at like common factors. I'm like, I'm a database guy. Interesting question from Erico. Erico says, what's the future of database mirroring? On Management Studio, we can't set up mirroring unless we use an old version. So I'm going to be honest, mirroring isn't really hard to set up. You don't really need the GUI for that. You could use T-SQL. And the T-SQL examples that are inside of Books Online, you could copy paste those out. It's not really that hard. So the thing with database mirroring was it's supposed to die away with availability groups. When Microsoft brought out availability groups, they're like, look at this new shiny, it's amazing, forget that database mirroring. But then availability groups are so complex and tricky, and they break in so many interesting, challenging ways. They don't work as well without a domain. They don't work as well under all kinds of situations. Remember, folks, for the questions, let's read right up there at the top, where I've cleverly hidden that right there. Go ahead and ask your questions up there. So database mirroring is still alive and kicking because availability groups are so cumbersome to set up in simple 2-server environments. So I think that database mirroring is never going to get better, but at the same time, it's good enough. Especially when you can just set it up in 5 minutes with scripts that you copy paste out of Books Online. I don't think it even really needs the GUI. So I think that I don't know that it's got a bright server in the sense that, let's see here. I don't think it's got a bright future in the sense that, that it's going to be amazing in the future, but it's totally fine. It does the job that's on the tin, does the thing on the tin. Next up, traceflag000. Oh, that's funny. Traceflag000 says, is there anywhere that I can report SQL Server bugs and report bugs reported by others? Yes, feedback.azure.com. So if I go to feedback.azure.com, feedback.azure.com. This is where you can provide feedback to all kinds of products from Microsoft, including SQL Server. So if you scroll down here, down on the right-hand side, there's SQL Server over there. You can click on that. Now, this is a combination of things that people wish SQL Server did and bugs. You'll find both of them in here. You will also find people who don't know what they're doing. People don't know how to produce or do reproducible scripts. So they'll file bugs that aren't really bugs when in reality it's a problem with their code. You'll also find things like, I wish SQL Server had a pony. And then also the search in here sucks. And I would use a lot of 4-letter words, except this is a family-friendly show. I don't know what kinds of families would ever want to watch this, but here you go. Bandar, that's great. I'm sure her college professor will be really excited about her solving the problem in the wrong language. So instead of searching in here, instead of using the search over here, what I would do is I would use Google. And when you do the search in Google, put in site:/Azure or feedback.azure.com. And then you can put the thing that you're looking for, like scalar function. And then that way it'll restrict your search to just that one website. So this works way better for me than feedback.azure.com. It's not a really slick and easy site. It's not like you can say in SQL Server 2017, list out the bugs for me, but that's all we have to work with. I can understand why they don't put much work into this, because after all, SQL Server is only $2,000 a CPU core and $7,000 for enterprise. Not quite sure. Next up, Anonymous says, morning, what is the best way to know if a database is in use? Oh, that question comes up all the time on forums. Okay, so let me tell you what I would do is I would look at the transaction log backups. Are the sizes of the transaction log backups always really tiny? If that's the case, it's probably not under active use. If the size of the log backups jumps up and down all over the place, that's a sign that people probably are inserting, updating, and deleting data. I'll show you another way that you can go see it. So if I go over to, I'll close a couple of these windows. If I go over to SP Blitz, if I say SP Blitz mode equals 2, get all databases equals 1, mode equals 2, get all databases equals 1. And of course, I'm calling the wrong stored procedure. SP Blitz index mode equals 2, get all databases equals 1. What this does is it gives you an Excel-friendly inventory of all the databases, all the indexes in those databases, and then you can scroll across and there are columns for, let me go find it, there we go. Last user seek, last user scan, last user update. Now, what these don't tell you, because these user queries could be any queries that are coming in from anything, including automated tools or index rebuild type tools. You may have tools that do a quick select to check some things, in which case they'll show up as queries here. But this is a pretty good starting point where you can just get a rough idea of at least is there activity happening inside this table. In here, you also get total reads and user updates, which will show you the number of inserts, updates, and deletes, and the number of selects that have been heading inside there. It's not bulletproof accurate, but it's better than nothing as a start. Quick shout out to this week's sponsor. I'm doing a webcast for Idera on why is the same query sometimes slow. If you've got a query that sometimes runs fast and sometimes runs slow, and you swear to God nothing has changed, the problem there is typically parameter sniffing. And so what I do during that 1-hour webcast is I explain what parameter sniffing is, I show you how to react when the emergency strikes, and give you a few tips on how to start solving it long term. You can register for that totally free over at brentozar.com/go/geeksync. brentozar.com/go/geeksync. Next up, what do we got here? CTI Geek says, is it okay to use SP Blitz on my production database? I use them on production systems all the time, all over the world. There's a huge following for tools like SP Blitz Cache, whatever. I will say this. Sometimes, if your SQL Server has corruption, querying certain things will cause it to do a memory dump. So for example, if you there are some specific builds where, wow, look at that, Surly Dev, nicely done. So for on certain builds, if you query certain DMVs, you'll cause SQL Server to crash. So I would just say two things. One is you want to make sure you don't have corruption. And then two, make sure you're decently patched. Like if you haven't patched in 4 or 5 years, you should probably start by patching first just to be safe, and then make sure you've been running CheckDB. Next up, Forrest says, how often do you encounter servers where query compilation is a major issue? It doesn't, it, it's kind of weird how this works. It doesn't happen that the compilation of queries is as much of an issue as people who don't do any parameterization on their queries. If they don't do any parameterization on their queries and SQL Server constantly compiles them as if it's seeing brand new queries every time, I hit that a lot. Like probably a third of the SQL servers that I hit are involved with that. And the problem that it causes isn't as much of high CPU as it is total plan cache amnesia, that your SQL Server can't ever remember any execution plans because you're constantly flooding it with all these brand new queries that aren't really brand new. So that does happen to me a heck of a lot. Next up, DJ asks, being very public as a professional persona, how do you differentiate between work and life on SoMe? 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 I don't know what SoMe means. Obviously I'm not that professional if I don't know what SOME means. Say a client follows you and interacts in a way that doesn't suit you on a personal level. Does that mean that you're not interested? Oh, social media. Oh, okay. I've never heard that before. I've heard social media. I've never heard SoMe. Does that mean you're not interested in the professional aspect? That's a really good question. That is a really good question. I'm going to rephrase it as, have I ever had people be creepy to me on social media? Yes, absolutely. Have I had clients be creepy to me on social media? Yes. But I've also said, hey, look, just as a side note, like quietly, hey, I don't think that that's appropriate, or I'm not comfortable with that level of interaction. And that's usually all it takes. And people are immediately like, whoop. I am lucky in that it's very clear that I'm married, that I don't have to deal with sexual harassment. And I have so much respect for women who put themselves out there in their personal lives on social media, because guys are buttholes. Like the vast majority of us are buttholes. It's unbelievable how bad guys are on social media. Hey, baby, I really like your presentation on whatever. Like I've had women friends in tech, and I've had to look at some of their direct messages or whatever. Like they've been like, here, look at this. And I'm like, oh God, I feel so sorry. We as guys, we need to do a lot better in our level of professionalism. Obviously I don't have the tools to teach everybody how to do that because, it's something that we all work with on a daily basis. But, so then on that, have I had people be creepy to me and then try to hire me as a client? Yep, absolutely. I've totally had that happen. Just depends on how bad you need the money, I guess. But next up, Emir says, I'm not sure if we're only doing SQL questions. I guess I shouldn't. I try to say about Microsoft SQL Server in the webcast description just because once I stream for a certain number of minutes, YouTube and Twitch start to promote me to other streams. And that's when you notice people showing up and saying things like, can you fix my printer? And I'm like, no, I can't really fix your printer. Why do you schedule your blogs in the future? Do you have any weekly or monthly cap for blogs that you think are optional? Yeah, or optimal. So I aim for 2 blog posts a week. I aim for around Tuesday and Thursday. Sometimes I have more. Sometimes I end up with more than that. But I try to schedule out 2 posts a week for the foreseeable future. So as I build more posts, I just stretch them out further in the past. This past month was different because I was blogging like nobody's business in order to promote the Black Friday sales, just to keep getting it in front of everybody. Hey, I got a sale, I got a sale, I got a sale. Here are the kinds of things that you learn. But normally it's just 2 posts a week. So why do I do them out in the future? Because I don't want to blog last minute. If you get behind on the queue in blogging, you tend to do a really crappy job, just writing for today. So the further out that I can schedule stuff, the more that I can go in and look at it and go, am I really comfortable with that? Is there anything that I want to change between that post now that I've actually written it? Dragon Slayer says, how do you maintain the difference between creepiness on social media? I mean, how do you deal like your client will not feel bad and you'll get the work done? Oh, I'm really lucky in that I will disengage. Then I'll be like, look, here's what I'm not comfortable with. Please don't do that again. Let's just keep a little distance here. If someone does it to me repeatedly, I can just say, look, I'm really not comfortable with this. I would rather not talk to the company about the interactions that we're having here. Whoop, that's the end of that. Because nobody wants to get fired for that kind of thing. Next up, Binu says, my SQL Server is hitting max worker threads most of the time. I'm not seeing CPU above 59%. Can you explain why it's hitting 100% once thread reach maximum? Okay, so let's see if I can do this quickly. What worker threads are is they're like, have you ever gone to a grocery store and gotten one of those pick a number? Have you ever gone to the grocery store and gotten one of those, like at a counter, the bakery, you pick a number and it says now serving number 200. Well, worker threads are like those little numbers that you pick. Imagine a grocery store where everyone picks a number and they take all of the numbers out. Now you've hit max worker threads. But the person behind the counter says, all right, I'm serving number 1. Where's number 1? The person with number 1 says, I need more time. I'm looking at all these delicious cakes and I haven't made my mind up. Can you go on to the next person? The baker says, okay, you got it. Now serving number 2. Number 2 says, oh, all this stuff looks delicious. I'm going to need some more time. So that is how you can reach max worker threads when all the queries aren't actually ready to do things. They just took a worker thread and they're not actually ready with their task. That's how you hit 100% worker time, and the person behind the counter still isn't actually doing any work. They're just waiting on the queries. So hopefully that explains it. Kind of like that explanation. That was on the fly. That was pretty good. Jack asks, we're about to start a data warehouse migration project. Glad you liked it. Thank you. About to start a data warehouse migration project. Is there any database benefit to having data files on different logical drives? Yes, if you're in a virtual environment. If you're in a virtual environment, you may need multiple virtual SCSI adapters or NVMe adapters in order to get the most throughput out of your storage. If assuming that you're dealing with a VM, go talk to your VM admins and their SAN admins to find out what they need from their end to maximize throughput to one VM. And you may need to get that vendor involved. If you're doing physical boxes, you don't get the VM person involved, but you still want to get the storage admin involved because sometimes you need multiple host bus adapters in the server and you need to saturate all of them with traffic. Normally, most people ask me this and I'm like, it doesn't matter, but you said data warehouse, and often data warehouses are a terabyte or more. That's where this stuff starts to matter. Next up, Lorad says, it's really nice to see Ola is making updates to his script again. Yes, those of you using Ola Hollingren's maintenance scripts, he is back up and active again after quite a while, which is cool. I switched to using his scripts. The gap in updates has me concerned about relying on those scripts in production going forward. Should DBAs be wary of relying on these scripts? One of the cool things about Ola scripts is that they really are open source. So if Ola got hit by the lotto, that's one of my favorite terms. If you get hit, no one wants to say get hit by a bus, but get hit by a lotto ticket. If you were hit by a winning lotto ticket, Haroon, that's a great question. It's a really detailed answer, but here's the thing I tell you. Given that you can't read the thing up at the top, the thing that you should focus on is text files. Now, so the thing with Ola scripts is because they're open source, if you wanted to go fork them and maintain them, you could. I have no doubt that if Ola got hit by the lotto, that he would somebody else would end up owning those scripts. I say owning them, like taking over maintenance on the scripts. Maybe they would move into the DBA tools repo. When he was disappearing, when he was gone for a while, I emailed him because I was like, hey, are you okay? And then when he came back with a positive response, I was like, good, because I don't want anyone else to have to maintain those scripts. He's the guy on that one. Is it safe to rely on him? Sure, absolutely, because if he gets hit by lotto, we'll just fork him, and then other people will start to maintain him too. Next up, Stuart. Stuart says, we're planning on implementing for the first time a service pack and CU patch. Other than disabling data movement, are there any advice, pitfalls, etc.? Oh man, patching an AG is a really big, complex kind of thing. You want to watch out to make sure that you're not running jobs. You have to adjust your quorum, all kinds of stuff. What I would do is go look at the training classes by Alan Hurt. If you go to SQLHA.com, SQLHA.com, he does classes on always-on availability groups, and he's got training on that exact kind of thing. So I can't say I'd totally go for that instead. Next up, contact administrator, and you change the spelling on your name. Contact administrator says, for tempdb related issues, how can we use SP Blitz first if queries using temp tables are suddenly performing slow? I'm glad you asked, and I tell you all about it in my brand new class. Fundamentals of tempdb. If you go to brentozar.com and then you click training up at the top, scroll down, and inside my live training classes, which are tons of fun, there's also this brand new Fundamentals of tempdb class. In that class, I explain to you what uses tempdb, how it uses tempdb, what queries you can use for troubleshooting, and how you can monitor it going forward. That, ladies and gentlemen, is Fundamentals of tempdb. I will see you in class. I have a little too much fun doing that voice. And next up, let's see here. Next up, CTI Geek says, I want to determine if a scalar function is still being used. Should I use extended events, or is there a better way? Yeah, the much easier way is SP Blitz cache. You can use SP Blitz cache and pass in a stored procedure name. And it says stored procedure name, but functions still work too. So you can pass in the function name there, and we check the plan cache for that. So SP Blitz cache stored proc name as the parameter. Next up, George says, I'm using SP Blitz index to check if a database has been used recently. Does an index rebuild, reorg, or checkdb affect the index seek number? Why don't you test? Why don't you find out? Go create a table, put an index on it, and do an alter rebuild. And you can see. It takes like 10 seconds. So this is probably the best thing that Paul Randall ever taught me. I worked briefly with Paul Randall and Kimberly Tripp over at SQL Skills. And one of my favorite lessons from Paul was, if you can build a demo to test something in 10 minutes, don't ask someone else. Asking someone else is doing a disservice to them and to you. Go learn. This is the way that you go and learn these things, is to go build that experiment, and then you can see, especially when building the experiment is that easy. So Paul and Kim are great. They're some of the funniest, smartest people that I've ever had the pleasure of interacting with. They're just absolutely wonderful. Abhishek asked, oh, funny, this is so funny, Abhishek, your name is in the demos of Fundamentals of tempdb. This is true. The number one name in India is Abhishek, spelled that exact way. So it's kind of funny how that works. So how have you learned performance tuning in SQL Server? So a long time ago when I was a developer, as Richie will attest, a long time ago when I was a developer, why did I just get time to wash your hands? I was working for a .com, and we had all kinds of money. You know, during initially in funding, everybody was throwing money at us left and right. We couldn't buy enough stuff. Like, we were given carte blanche to buy everything that we wanted. And then one day the crash happened, and the funding stopped. And we had to make do with the servers that we had. Even though our user count was skyrocketing, our hardware was not. So I had to come up with creative ways. Exactly. I mean, we had all kinds of ridiculous stuff like that. It was not even funny. So I had to come up with all kinds of creative ways to make our existing hardware work. And so that was when I just had to roll up my sleeves and figure out SQL Server performance tuning. I sucked at it back then, but just that was the original motivation of you have to figure it out, and you have to figure it out by tomorrow, because the server will go down again tomorrow if we can't figure out how to handle this workload. And when there are only like 5 of you on the team and you've been working right alongside the owners of the company and just trying to get this pig to fly, it really is. You don't want to let your friends down. You feel like it's a do or die, or the company's going to fail. There was a point at that particular company when it was overrated. I like mine. I actually like mine a lot. I'm on my second one now because I've had them for so long. There's one bad thing about air-ons, which is when you fart, you hear it. Like, it's crystal clear. The first time that you fart in an air-on chair, you're going to be like, who is the elephant that just ran through this room? It is stunning how loud your farts are in an air-on chair. It's kind of weird how that works. But yeah, that's how I learned performance tuning, was AKA the hard way. Next up, NDC says, an app is inserting, updating, deleting data the wrong way. Which tool is the best to find out which app did this? Will a trigger work? Oh, that's interesting. When you say the wrong item, oh, that's really neat. So if you Google for advice on triggers, you're usually going to hear people say bad things about them. But you know what? This isn't a bad use for triggers. The problem is, if anything goes wrong with your trigger logic, you might stop someone's legit insert from working. So just make sure your trigger code is right. So trigger codes are one way. Trigger is one way to do this. Extended events is another. With extended events, you could monitor inserts on one specific table, and in there you could capture the login or whatnot of who's doing it. You said which one is the best way to find out which did it? If I was going to do it, I would probably try extended events. I haven't done that myself, but I think it would be the lowest overhead that would give me the least likelihood of breaking someone's insert, because adding triggers can actually break people's inserts. So that's where I would go. Next up, Michael J. Swart asks, oh, we got his little icon on there. Oh, that's cool that we see that. Do you see any unstaked domains in SQL Server that has urgent problems or problems that you're not personally interested in? Oh, yes. It's so funny. I had a talk with a friend of mine about that, and I'm not going to say what the domain name is because we had this talk like 2-3 years ago, and he went down that road and he kind of owned it. The trick is urgent prod problems, because Microsoft keeps bringing out R in the database, Python in the database, all these kinds of weirdo feature, Java in the database, but no one adopts them, so they don't really get urgent prod problems. But there's one, column store. Column store indexes, massive, huge opportunity there. There are so many problems with the implementation, with people maintaining them. That is just huge. And when I say that, your reaction is, oh, Nico Neugebauer out of Portugal, try and go find him. He has disappeared. He moved out of Portugal. His social media has disappeared. I've sent him emails. I've got pull requests open for his column store index library. That is a big monster hole. I am not going down that road. Like, I built my fundamentals of column store class, but that's as far as I'm going. Like, I don't think I'm going to put together a mastering column store class, but that one is massive. The other one, to some extent, in-memory OLTP. But I don't know that I would want to invest time in that as much as I would column store. Like, I think column store is el numero uno. Okay, because Jeff said auto seeding, just because he happened to mention it, totally unrelated. Availability groups is the other one. So Alan Hurt used to be the #1 name in the industry for availability groups. Dude just stopped blogging. Just totally stop blogging. There are huge problems out there on that side. That feature is just totally chock full of landmines. That's another example. Dino, I see how you asked a question there. I'm going to forgive you for not putting it up on the stream. This is a Keychron K8. So that is a Keychron K8 there. Next up, let's see here. Barath says, what are the main reasons behind slowness of an update statement? For me, most of the time, too many indexes and parent-child referential foreign keys, like SQL servers having to go off and check all kinds of foreign keys. My wife just texted me, so that's what that ding was. I'm going to respond to her and say, give me 5 minutes, give me 5, streaming will stop at 7:30. All right, so there's that. Next up, DBA Magic says, with TDE, if the computer administrators, it was my phone, computer administrators do not have the TDE keys, will they be able to see the data? Oh, sure. TDE only encrypts the data on disk. It doesn't encrypt it in memory or from the select statement. So as long as they can log into SQL Server and query the tables, then they can still totally query all the data. It doesn't stop people from seeing it. Next up, Random says, I'm not sure what you're going there with Nordic Bull. Let's not do that. So have you ever had to run DBCC page? What scenarios working with this command makes sense? Only during training classes, that's it. Never in reality. I've never had any use for it over in reality where I had to actually run it in a production scenario. People do. I mean, like Paul Randall I've seen have use for it, but I've just never had any use for it personally. Let's see, next up, we'll say Salamowitz says, good morning. Do you know if there's any substitution for Microsoft Visual Studio? Is there any other way to practice AGs in a safe environment? So AGs, availability groups, don't require Visual Studio. I think you might have a mix-up there between a couple of different technologies. Availability groups is an engine feature. Visual Studio is for coding, but they don't really have any overlap there between the two. And then we'll do one more question before I go break off and go get my wife for breakfast. Number 3, woot. Stuart says, out of curiosity, when you're, I should use that, there's a stop taking messages button. I forgot about that. I can click that, and I think it stops y'all from, it stops you from posting questions. How cool is that? That's the first time I've ever tried. That's really neat. Stuart says, just out of curiosity, when you're working on a new class, what factors do you consider for picking your topic? That's such a good question. I want to pick something that really lines up with what Michael J. Swartz's question asked about earlier. Are there urgent production pains with it? And are a lot of people hitting them? That is like the gold mine area. The next part of that is there any competition in that space? And is that topic stable? Is it like if I write training material for it, am I going to be able to reuse that training material for the next 4, 5, 6, 10 years? My worst nightmare, so I'll give you a great example, Azure SQL DB. My worst nightmare would be asking or building training material on Azure SQL DB because it changes every time you turn around. If you went and wrote a bunch of training material on it, it would be outdated by the time the next year rolled around and you'd have lost your shirt. You'd lose so much money inside there. So my goal, my idea of a perfect training class, you don't have to do that. SP or SP Who is Active will do that for you. SP Who is Active does it for you. My idea of a perfect training class is something that I write. A lot of people want to buy it, and I can keep delivering that same one for, say, 5 or 10 years, which starts to explain now fundamentals of index tuning, mastering index tuning. That stuff doesn't change much. It's been the same way for the last 20 years. It'll be the same way for the next 10 or 15 years. Fundamentals of query tuning, mastering query tuning, fundamentals of server tuning, all the stuff, parameter sniffing, tempdb. These are all things that are fairly mature and a lot of people use. So that's how I end up picking those. What do I use to learn the topic in detail? For me, it's client. Like that I only want to solve problems that teach about things that I've actually solved at clients, because I feel like I would be a sham if I taught something that I hadn't actually worked on in production. Like Column Store, I didn't want to bring out a class on Column Store until I'd had clients repeatedly using it and using it at scale where we actually solved real problems. So that kind of wraps it up. So thanks again to Idera for sponsoring this week. Idera is sponsoring this week for brentozar.com/go/geeksync. I'm teaching a totally free webcast in January about what to do when the same query is sometimes fast and sometimes slow. So it's totally free. You can sign up for it over at brentozar.com/go/geeksync. And let's give a round of applause to Surly Dev, who got to enjoy himself instead of having to deal with copy-pasting questions around. That is kind of phenomenal. Surly Dev, I'm curious to see how y'all liked the tool for questions. Like, should we keep using that again to let you keep upvoting and downvoting questions? Because it seemed like it was really easy on my end. I enjoyed it quite a bit. So it was kind of neat to see. I like it quite a bit there. All right, so no, Bob, that's a great question. No mastering availability groups. I actually got out of the business of availability groups training altogether when they brought out Linux, availability groups on Linux. I was like, I'm out, I'm done. Because I don't want to cover that big, huge, massive feature area. There are just too many areas between distributed availability groups, standard availability groups, Linux, Kubernetes, all that kind of thing. There were just way too many things to go and master, so I didn't want to bother with it anymore. Plus, dealing with availability groups means that you're on call 24/7, and I don't want to be on call. I like to get drunk. Maybe even this morning. Camaro, good to see you. I haven't seen you in here. So, all right, thanks a lot for hanging out with me, y'all. I am not doing one of these tomorrow, I don't think. I got to go look at my calendar. Tomorrow I might. It's possible that I might do one tomorrow. We'll wait and see. I have to go get the car 10,000 mile service here shortly. So, all right, I'll see y'all later. Adios, folks.